Hi everyone! My name's Julia and I'm an educator at the Columbia River Maritime Museum. Today we're going to be talking all about the Tillamook Rock Lighthouse, otherwise known as Terrible Tilly. Terrible Tilly was seen as one of the worst places to be sent to in the lighthouse service during its time, and it was common for keepers to stay for just a year or two before asking to be transferred. The lighthouse was finally completed in 1881 after about 2 years of struggling to get construction supplies on the rock and of struggling to keep men on the job. When Tillamook Rock was first lit, it had a first-order Fresnel lens that could be seen as far as 18 miles out at sea. In the early years, keepers would work 120 days on the rock before getting 30 days of shore leave, but even then, they couldn't always get off because of how bad the weather was. Because Terrible Tilly was constantly getting hit by wind, rain, and salt water, it took a lot of work to maintain her. The keepers' days were filled mostly with chores, and they took a lot of pride in keeping her in the best possible condition. When they weren't working, they had to get creative with how they spent their free time. Some keepers took up photography, boxing, fishing, or cooking. The lighthouse was a beacon in the Pacific for 76 years, from 1881 until 1957, before it was decommissioned and replaced by a buoy. Her ownership changed hands a few times as investors thought they could transform Tillamook Rock into a vacation spot, and then realized how challenging a bed and breakfast in the middle of the ocean would be. Eventually, the lighthouse was purchased by Mimi Morissette and Kathy Riley, who wanted to turn Tillamook Rock into the Eternity at Sea columbarium in the early 1980s. They intended for it to be the final resting place of anyone who had their ashes taken out to the rock. Unfortunately, without lighthouse keepers constantly taking care of the building, it began to fall apart and maintenance became extremely difficult. Despite their best efforts, the columbarium shut down in the late 1990s. The lighthouse is still privately owned and is facing new renovations, and Tillamook Rock is part of the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge Complex and is a nesting site for seabirds.